Hey folks, welcome back to my new series. Welcome back? Well, that doesn't even make any sense. I guess because this is kind of a extension of my security pin series. I'm not going to rehash how to make pins, but I am going to show you how to use them. Today, we're going to be taking my ABIS 8345 that you may recall from, gosh, I forget which video it was. It was like video 3 or 4. And I'm going to be taking that lock and I'm going to be turning it into a challenge lock. And I just figured I'd start by laying out a lot of the tools you're going to need. Now I've already disassembled this just so I could show off everything and show you how we're going to assemble it. You'll need the C-clip for the core. You'll need a lock of some kind. I'm using an 8345 with a 300 core series. What do they call it? 300 patented, it says on the front. They cost about, I don't know, probably about $25, depending on where you get one. I don't even remember where I got this one from. All the tools I got, for the most part, you can get at any Harbor Freight, as well as, like, you know, you can just get that at Walmart or Amazon or whatever. You'll recognize some of these tools. They were the same ones that I use for making the actual pins. And I'm not going to be doing that much. There is going to be some pin cutting in this towards the end, probably, I don't know, episode 2 or 3, where I'm going to dress up the new key pins. But you'll need scissors to cut the sandpaper. I have 500 and 1000 grit. I have, of course, my drafting stuff where I was writing things out. Keep a pick handy. I'm going to show you a neat little trick if you screw up and put the core in wrong, and it gets stuck. If it gets stuck in one place in particular, how to recover. This right here, this is just a tap and die set, and I believe this is a 632. This will fit perfectly inside the chambers and will give us some good results when we're doing challenging options. I've also got, you know, the screwdriver for disassembly, follower, pin tweezers. Caliper can come in handy when you're planning on, you know, the changes. And this is just a standard alphanumeric Pittsburgh 36-piece stamping set so that I can appropriately mark the lock. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is because I want to show basically how a generic, very simple, very basic challenge lock can be made. Enough to satisfy the requirements for those of you that are on the Lockpicking Reddit. In order to get past any belt past green, blue on up, you need to have at least created one challenge lock. And that requires, you know, X number of basic requirements that you modified the lock. I'm going to show you how to do more than enough to cover that, and we're going to go from there. There's going to be a little bit of key cutting. Here's what I'm going to be doing. So this is the original pinning, which by itself, if I can get this thing to focus, there we are. By itself, isn't actually half bad. You know, I mean, it's 4 spools of serrated and then the key pins. By itself, this isn't exactly an easy lock, but I'm not using any of this stuff. I'm actually going to be using some of the pins that I made in my pin making series, and then I'm going to be adding to that by carving up the key pins. So that was the old bitting, and this is going to be the new bitting. Now, these are, you know, there's a lot of deep numbers in here. The original bitting was, I think, 1331 and then an empty chamber, and this is just a C, you know, standard Schlage C1 key. And that's fine and all, But I found out that you can utilize the bow pin or not the bow pin, the tip pin or whatever it's called. Um, and if you put a 9 pin in that 6th cylinder, it engages with this just perfectly fine. So we're going to add that extra pin at the back. Oh, and by the way, spoilers, you're going to get to see what's inside this challenge lock. So, you know, kind of do a Men in Black. Please focus. Please focus. There like can't be anything in the background or this will not focus at all. Hang on, let me switch to manual. There we go. So that's what we're going to be putting in. We got a champagne glass. We've got the Chronos pin. We've got a chalice. There's a really nice deep serrated. And then a quasar, I believe, is what that one was. So, yeah, we're gonna create some fun here. And I'm gonna explain each of the pins as I get into the chambers. Some of the other stuff we're gonna be covering. We're going to be covering counter milling in addition to this. And just to show you, I went on Amazon and I needed a vise for the counter milling. This is a walnut vise, is the way they sell them. And it's a very small vise. But if you'll notice, if you put a lock in there, you can hold it pretty darn level. Whoop, get it to the end. Pretty darn level, pretty darn steady, enough to do the counter milling. And I'll show you how that's done. Now I'm using you can do it by hand if you'd like. I am using a Dremel drill press. And once I get to it, we'll show you how all that works. But yeah. This is the start of the series. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to need. And you don't have to do all of this, and I'm going to go into that in the next parts of this episode as we get through all the planning stuff. Excuse me. Yeah. Let's just, I'm going to break the video and clean this up a little bit. And we're going to start with the basics, and we're going to go from there. All right, everyone. So I got the workspace cleaned up and set up for what the first part of this video is going to really be about. And that's going to be planning a challenge lock. Now, I'm taking a lock that, frankly, had really poor bidding. I mean, the original bidding on this was 13311 and then an empty 6th pin chamber. Well, those are all really high and really easy to pick, and there's not much variation there. And the other problem is too is with the pins that are in there, I don't, you know, taking it out, I've got a lot of room to work with in terms of pin height, but what I don't have a lot of room with is key pin height. All the pins are really small, and these are really hard to work with. And I didn't really want to mess with that. So what I did was I decided to just cut deeper. You can always cut a deeper channel for the pin. And each one of these bits here on the key, they're just at the highest. I mean, you can't add material unless you get a key blank. So I got kind of lucky here. I didn't get good bidding on the original, but I've got kind of, it's about as close to a blank as you can get. I just got to work around the existing shape. So what I did was we're going to take the 1 pin, which is currently a 1, and we're going to drop that all the way down to 5. And then we're going to progressively get deeper up in here. 5. We're going to bring pin 2 from a 3 down to a 4. Not a big jump. Then pin 3 we're going to bring from a 3 nowhere. We're going to leave this one just where it's at. because the next one we're going to come back down to 5. So we're going from a 1 to a 5, and then for pin 5, which is this last little nub right here on the end, we're going to go from a 1 to a 2 just to bring it down a little bit and get it closer for that 9. We don't want a too big of a skip, and I may even have to go to a 3 on that. I don't even know yet. But I got the room to work with. You can always take off more material, you just can't add it back. So start with a lower number that you think might work, and then go from there. Other modifications. Now, if I go through, if you look at the lockpicking Reddit requirements, which is what this is for, you're going to find that they require you to have 6 modifications. So for 6 modifications, I'm putting 6 custom driver pins in this lock. That's it. That's all you need to do. That's as far as you need to go with it. I'm going to go much farther than that, but you only need to put the 6 driver pins in. Or if you've got 5 driver pins, go ahead and add modifications to a couple of key pins as well. Well, that's all well and good, but that's not much of a challenge. So let's get a little devious with it. We're dropping all of the pins down. We're going to serrate all of these. We're going to be putting in 6 custom pins and adding a whole pin chamber that uses the tip of the key to get to shear. We're also going to be alternating spring tension between copper and iron, steel, whatever, springs. It's all iron. That right there will mean, with the custom key, cut key pins, with these, I'm not sure if springs would count as a modification, but I'd say it's not what the factory put in, so it's a modification. I mean, we're already looking at 13, just with that. Now, the way the rules work on these things, I'm going to tap and die all of these up in here because all of my pins will work really horrendously inside of a threaded chamber. And that's awesome. The only pin that doesn't really get to shine, depending on what I put in there, is this last one, the 9 pin. So when we cut that, we don't even have to cut it. There's only a little bit of space in here. I don't even know how much that is. Let's see. So when a 9 pin is in the cylinder, let's see. 45,000th of an inch, 1.16 millimeters. So yeah, there's not much room in there, That's why I decided we're going to be doing countermilling, and I'm going to put this grail-like pin in there. So it will start off hung up on the countermilling. That's my plan for that one. All the others, they're going to be in deep enough where they're going to interfere with both threading and with the countermilling. So yeah, there's 13 modifications. You only get credit for 1 modification for threading all of them. I am going to thread all of them, but that only counts as 1 modification. If you do countermilling, which I'm going to show you, that counts as 1 modification. So at the end of this, we're going to be up to 15 modifications on the challenge lock, but we're still not done. Let's look at some other things. Something you can do is create some other kind of secondary locking mechanism. Good example of this would be like the Schlage Primus's finger pins. If you were to add that to an existing lock, that's a hell of a mod. If it came with the lock, though, that you don't get credit for that. But adding something like an extra check pin or something else of that nature would probably get you really good brownie points on it. But that counts as a modification. As well as we're going to be doing some punching along the side of this. We're going to identify it. You know, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to give it a model number. I'm going to put my Reddit username on there so that everything can be tracked well. And we'll put it into circulation. Now, I'm going over the Reddit belt picking rules with this, kind of by and by. But here's the thing. Other clubs, you may have different requirements. You know, there's a lot of lock sport clubs out there, and some of them may have adopted the belt ranking system from Reddit, which is awesome. They actually say go right ahead and do it. You know, it's all under Creative Commons, I believe. But you may have modified it. You may have changed some things around for doing it. That's why I'm trying to give you as many options as possible. So at the end of the day, we're going to end up with 16 modifications on this lock. 10 more than what's necessary for the minimum for your challenge lock for Reddit belt ranking. So I'm going to go ahead, our new bidding, going to plan this out, 5, 4, 3, 5, 2, and then the 9 pin. I tried to put an 8 pin in there to give me some more room, but it didn't quite come up to shear. All of these match up perfectly with this. I'm going to get rid of these pins. They're all going to go into a bag with one of these keys. We only need one key for the challenge lock. So I'm going to set it aside just as a, hey, this is what this lock originally came with. And I am putting all new hardware into the new lock. So I'm going to cut the video here. Going to get set up for the first part. First thing we're going to tackle is going to be actually the counter milling. Because the counter milling on this is, you really want to do it before you do the threading on the chambers. I made that mistake on one core already that I had to toss because I butchered it bad. What happened was that the tip of the Dremel, which you'll see in a little bit, actually caught on the threading and got dragged down in, and it screwed up a couple of the threads and left a nice big gaping hole in the side. I probably had it set too fast. Whoops. Yeah, don't lose this. This little thing keeps falling out on me because I keep forgetting it's in the core. When you get these 300 series cores, there's like a little anti-drill wafer in the side. It looks like it's just a master pin or something, or a control pin. But it just sits in the side there. I may actually put a larger one in there, and I may even see if I might be able to manufacture a cap, and maybe that might be a way to put in a secondary locking mechanism, but that'll be for a different lock. Alright, so let me get set up and we'll get right to it. Alright, I got everything set up on my Dremel drill press, which is a nice little thing to have. I've got the walnut post set up on the walnut vise, and I have the core locked down in the middle and made about as vertical as I can do it with eyeball. I also have the engraving bit that I'm going to be using, which is just a little, you know, standard Dremel tip. It's the engraving ball that is about 1.3 millimeters. And what I have the height depth already set up, so it's just we're going to come down in here like this, and then we're going to move the core around inside the hole. Then we're going to let up, go on to the next hole. My first core I actually screwed up because I was down in it and I was trying to hold this manually at the right height whilst I did the counter milling, and I totally borked the whole thing up. On this one, I've got that depth preset, so I just have to hold it there while I move this, and we should be good. this is, I gotta think, the best way I've found for a home hobbyist to do this sort of thing. If you have other ideas, though, feel free to leave me a message in the comments, and we can go from there. But I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to start doing the first one just so you can see it. And the camera is right next to the motor. You know, it's like right here. So hopefully it won't be too loud. If it is, I apologize. But this is your headphone warning here right now. So let's get this going. Now I've still got it set to speed 15. I am going to turn it up to 20, however. Okay, bring it over the chamber that you want to countermill, and I'm just going to do this middle one here for you right now on video, and then I'm going to finish the job, and we'll cut on to doing the threading. Start off slow. Don't try and grab too much. You just go around the circle. It's most likely to grab when it gets at its deepest point. So just take it easy and take off a little bit at a time. When you start to feel a heavy vibration, it means you're pretty much at max depth. Like that. And just take your time, it's not a race. When you're done, bring it back to the center, let it come up, then turn it off. And there you go. One very well countermilled, I think anyway, top. Let me get a pick in there so you can see. Yeah, that's a pretty nice lip in there. I think that's going to catch the edges of some pins quite well. Now, like I said, the reason why you do the countermilling before you do the threading is because you want to make sure that you've got a nice smooth surface to start engraving on. If it's angled, it can grab it, pick this up, yank it off to the side, whatever. Doing the countermilling first makes it so much smoother. So I'm going to get the rest of these countermilled, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the tapping. Alright folks, now we're going to thread this, and we're going to make it difficult, and it's going to be fun. But here's our 632 tapper. And it's just part of the regular Harbor Freight set. Just if you get a Harbor Freight set, make sure it actually has a 632. A couple of their sets don't go down that far. But at any rate, now looking at this, I don't want to thread like all the way through the thing because I don't want to screw up any of the warding on the inside. And I don't want to make it threaded like completely down. So I'm figuring if all I need to go in is about that far on the lock, which is, let's see, I can't really, can I get this to focus right about here? Yeah. So I'm going to go down into the lock chamber about that far, right about to that line. If I go any further, I'm going to end up hitting the warding, and the threads are going to end up going all the way down through the entire chamber. And I want the bottom part to not have the threads in it. Not because there's any really difference in difficulty. I'm just trying to minimize binding in places where having the threads there doesn't really do much of anything. You know, except for potentially give ways for things to get jammed up in the lock and everything else. So yeah, let's start doing it. Let me get the focus back here. Good. Auto. Yeah, we'll try auto. Maybe it'll cooperate tonight. I'm using just regular hair clipper blade oil. You can use pretty much any lubricant you want. With some of these locks, especially if you get the brass ones, you don't even need the lube. Just do it dry. And what I normally do is I don't want to douse the lock and get oil all over everything. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to put a drop right in here. And I'm just going to work it in to the metal in the places that are going to be going down in the chamber. And we're just going to start at chamber 1 here. Now I like to set it down on a nice level surface. Matter of fact, you know, if you still got your walnut vise here, just set it up on your walnut vise. But mark this if you're going to do that. Because remember, I'm relying on being able to see where the tip is inside the core. So that's why I'm doing it manually. But so we got a little bit of lube on the tip of it. And we're just going to set it in. Try and, you know, before you start turning, try and line it up reasonably straight. You don't want to cut crooked threads, and then just give it a little turn to get it started. You should feel it start to bite. It doesn't take much pressure, folks. So we're just going to go in. Now I'm watching that tip, and when that tip gets to be where I want it, which right about there, and I'll try it. Let me focus this in here, and let's try and get it in focus so you can see what I'm talking about. Maybe it's a luck kebab. Let's focus right about there. That way I can show you this. So you can see where the tip is. It's right up at that line, that first bit of warding. That's where I'm stopping with this. So I'm going to go back through, and we're going to do the rest of the chambers. But let me show you the end result. Just back it back out. And you can see inside, we've got threads that start immediately after the counter milling. They're light threads, but they're nice and sharp, and they should wreak some havoc. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to thread the rest of the chambers, and we'll be back for the next bit. Alright folks, so next up, let's bring the camera down here a little bit so you can see what's going on. Okay. Next up, we're actually going to load up the top with the pins. Now, the reason why I'm not doing threading in the Bible portion is mostly a matter of excess difficulty. I don't want to make this first one insanely hard. I'm going to be doing something very similar to this Schlag lock here, a nice little Primus lock. This one's going to be like my piece de la resistance or whatever challenge lock. I'm just waiting on some more parts and some more tools to make some extra modifications. I might do a video on it. I haven't decided yet. But let's go ahead and we're going to load up the core, put all the pins in, make sure we get our pinning orders right and stuff like that. I have actually done it backwards once before, which is embarrassing and sad. So yeah, I usually start from the center, and I do 3 on one side. So we're going to do pin 4, and we're going to put that nice little hourglass in it. Pin 3. Oh, see, look at that. I already goofed it up because I had that dang thing backwards. Normally I start from the other side. But we're going to load it up. Now, I've already laid out these pins based on how deep the key pins are. But if you want, go ahead and switch them up. Like here's one that's almost the same size as that, as pin 3. So let's put that there, because that way more of this will end up in the keyway. And this will be a really nice one to get lodged in the space that's going to be generated there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show it to you. So let's put all of our key pins in, see where they're going to sit. And let's double check it. I mean, I just guessed. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's also a good time to test to make sure that your threading doesn't hang up too much. Okay. So let's grab each pin now, and we come in real close up. Come in real close here so that I can show this. Let me get the focus right. Focus. Where do I want it? Ooh, that's a really narrow focal plane, folks. Yeah, let's go like that. All right. So we got all the key pins in, so let's see how the lock is at rest. Let's grab this first one, see how much is in there. So the bottom portion of it is going to come into play. Oh wow, that's just the same size as that counter milling. Oh, that's going to be vicious. I am so sorry. And even the center serration on this tends to get hung up. So it acts like a double spool. That's exactly what I was going for. This one, we're just going to drop in. This is going to be serrations. Let's see how many of them get buried here. So there's 3 visible there. Third one goes in. We got 3 on the other side. So yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. Could be worse. Another hourglass. This one's super deep. I want this one to almost, yeah, see, there we go. That one may actually get drawn up on a counter rotation because of the angle. It might not be the best spot for it. So let's see if it'll fit someplace else a little bit better. Yeah, see, this one's right at the shear line. And let's check this one. Put the narrower end in first, I guess. This one, if it wants to cooperate. And that one's right about at the shear line too. So actually, yeah, we're going to do this order now. We're just going to change it. I'll get those in a second. This one, does it go in past the ball? Yes, it does. That's what I wanted. So now the ball will come in fully into play on that. And then this last one, because it was real high, I was kind of saving this pin. It's just a really deep spool with a really small serration on it that's going to start off, jammed up kind of in the lock. All of this should be pickable. And especially if you watch the video, you know what to expect, you know what not to do in the lock. You should be able to figure it out. So, I'm not breaking any records here. I am going to sand down the pins again slightly and polish them up, just because I'm putting threading and counter milling in here. It's already sticky enough as it is. I may actually run a little roll of sandpaper inside these, and that's just dressing stuff that I'll go over in a later video. But for right now, we got the key pins loaded up, so let's unload them because we're not at that point yet. Which one was that? That was 6. So let me dump the key pins back out now. Because remember, we're going to be modding these. We're going to be adding serrations to them, and maybe even some little shenanigans to those as well. You know, at the end of the day, they're all pins you can work on. It's just these are really hard pins. I'm not sure if they're straight steel. They came in the lab kit. See, that's already kind of a... What are you doing? There we go. Okay. Well, they all fall out, so I might just give it a quick pass with some sandpaper. But we'll see that in the next one. For now, let's get back to this. Pop our follower in. Go to the right side this time. And let's... Whoop, got my springs backwards. Let's put that one in. That was 3, or 4, sorry. 5, and 6. Come on, cooperate, you little fucker. Okay, there we go. And now let's put the pins in. Now, I made these to be universal, and I tested them in this orientation, so this is the orientation I'm going to put them in. When you're making your key pins, that is a factor, you know. There are some key pins that you're going to want to put in one way, or you're going to design them to be put in a certain way, and that's kind of, you know, what you want to start with. I'm just going to drop these. Now this one, remember, you want to set it in the orientation that is correct. So in this case, the thicker part is going to be on the bottom. Oh, that's going to be dreadful. I can't wait. Alright, on to the other side. It's funny, everybody shows lock gutting videos. Very people actually show putting the lock back together, which I find kind of amusing. I don't know. I like doing it either way. Putting a multi-lock back together, that's fun. When I had to put, you know, I did that multi-lock interactive plus. That was a 4-pin, and that was just absolutely atrocious to put back together. I almost buggered the lock, and I don't even remember what I did wrong. But lock manufacturers like to put construction holes on the sides, and occasionally you can get it stuck, which is something that I actually did. With this lock, I put the... Oh, wow, that's a tough spring. There we go. I had actually put the cylinder in when I was testing pin heights, and I wasn't paying attention to which way I was doing it. And I slid it all the way in, and it was off center, and it clicked. And I was like, you should not have clicked. What happened? Well, the pin, the rotation limiter on this had end. I went all the way in, and I had it backwards because I was just checking for clearance on the pins. It didn't matter the orientation. It got all the way down to the end and actually ended up in the one pinhole. Well, the neat thing is that there's enough room behind the keyway in here, you know, right about in here, that you can actually slide a Peterson H1 15,000th hook down into the hole and relift the pin. So yes, I buggered it. If that had gotten stuck somewhere in the middle of the lock, I don't know if I'd have been able to get it. I doubt it. But yeah, I was able to rescue this video. Otherwise, this video wouldn't have been happening tonight, folks. Thank goodness for small favors, right? So that's ready to go. It is loaded. Now we got to start thinking about key pins. Now, I'm going to get set up here so that I can show you what I'm going to do to the longer ones. and I'm going to do one pin. I'm not going to do all of them for the purposes of I'll just show you the finished product when I'm done making it, but I am going to show you one pin as part of this. And then we get to have fun trying to cut the key, because I suck at cutting keys, but we're going to give it a whirl. Alright folks, I got pin number 1 vised up, and we're going to do what would normally be in one of my pin making videos, although I've kind of explained already what I'm going to be doing. Let's just go ahead and start in on it. I am going to give it a quick buff with some 1000 grit, just because the lab pins, they're really sharp on the edges, which I like, but given that I'm using threading and stuff, it might be too much, and one of these pins may get hard locked inside a cylinder. So I'm just going to facilitate a little bit of pin movement there, just kind of, you know, touch things up, and then we're going to cut a pair of serrations into this particular pin. This is a 5 pin, by the way. I don't want to cut them too deep. Flying canine. I'm back. I think I got it done anyway. Yeah. So we got 2 nice serrations in there, fairly sharp, not too deep. I'm not trying to break any records with this thing. I still do want to, however, sand it up a little bit. So let's just pop you right back in there for a minute. A little bit deeper since we're done cutting. Yeah, it's nice, but it needs a quick buff. So 1000 grit sandpaper, just a little strip, and let's do it. And that is the completed first key pin. I'm going to do the same thing to all the rest of the pins. I'm going to come back when I get to 9 though. That one's going to get something special. The rest of them are short enough. They're only going to get either 1 or 2 serrations. But that last pin, I got room to play. We're going to make something kind of interesting to trap the picker if they overset. Alright folks, I got all the rest of the driver pins kind of set up as a, well, they look pretty nice. I'll show them to you in a minute. They're all set up. They got serrated. There's one that's got a little extra flare on it, just because I just decided to get creative with it. So we're going to cut the last one, and I'm going to turn this into a spool top. You know, nothing super fancy. Just going to basically take out a fairly decent chunk in the middle and give a lot of room for this, the top part to get stuck in that counter milling. Need different file. Now we're going to finish it with the sandpaper. And that will be the last of that. Come on. I don't know, what do you think? Should I call it an F-bomb? I think that'll work out good. So now we have all the pins cut, all the key pins. And the last thing we're going to do, let me get back in focus here. I'll show you all the pins. Nice close-up. Still in numerical order. So we have double serration, single, single, double, and then part of one of my quasar pins right here, and then we've got a kind of a mushroom flare shape here that should, if the pin is overset, it should keep it hung up there for a little bit. I mean, you know, I didn't want to make it too sharp here because then it might actually get hung up in the lock like all the time, and that wouldn't be good. So, yeah, mild serrations. I think we're good. Let's go on to the next segment where we line this up and start getting ready to cut the key. Hey folks, so I got all the key pins set in the lock. It's kind of locked up right now because, well, something funky is going on. I don't know what I did wrong, but they will come out. I just have to dump them, and then we've got to start filing down the key to get to the shear line. So we're going to start with just dumping. That was pin 2. And this is why you constantly want to be testing things out and trying them out. I think I'm going to have to sand the threads like I was hoping I wouldn't have to do, but that's alright. We can do it, and we can give it a little bit more room. And a little bit of slop will make it slightly easier to pick, and you know what? That's fine. So, first thing we're going to do, let's take the first pin in, and Bosnian Bill actually has a really good video on how to do this, and I'm basically going to be using his methods. So, I'm a little bit higher, sitting here. That's really tough in there. That doesn't move at all. So it's already hung up on stuff, just chilling there. That's funny. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to sand the chambers. But yeah, we gotta get this down there a little bit first. So let's get it to the shear line. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to take the pin out. I'm going to set it here so I know which pin I'm working on. So I'll move it up one. We're going to set the core aside for a little bit. And we're just going to lock this up in the vise with pin 1 just barely past. So it's nice and solid. Let me get this set up here so you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, there we go. That's a good view. Alright, so I'm going to start, and I've got my fine needle file here, and I'm just going to start by bringing this down right in where it's at. Now I gotta go from a 1 to a 5, so I'm taking off quite a bit, but I want to try and keep it centered with where the key pin is supposed to be, and I'm just gonna go along this way, and I'll come back once I've done this cut. Alright folks, this is what we end up with. It's reasonably close right now. I still have to sand the insides of the chambers, and the key itself still sticks like crazy. But here's the rough new cut. It's not too bad. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through any kind of angle or place where there's a whole heck of a lot of material that there really doesn't need to be. And I'm just going to try not to get into where I've cut down for the actual pins, and just clean up all the edges. It's going to be a very interesting wave pattern when it's done. But I just wanted to show you this, you know, and all you're really doing is you're going like this with the round file, and then when you get to a corner, you just knock off the corners with a flat file and just kind of shape it over a little bit. So I'm going to keep going, and when I get the key fully refined, we'll be back and we'll do the final fit, and we'll see whether or not we've got a working challenge lock. Now, I am already at 14 modifications. So I got the all 6 lower, all 6 upper pins for 12 modifications, and then I've got the threading and the counter milling. And I'm just doing fine tuning right now, sanding a couple things, just trying to make sure, you know, everything works smoothly with the lock before I put it together. Because if I put it together and it does not fit right, I may not get it back out. So we'll see you here in a minute after we get this key cleaned up. So folks, I just wanted to show you real quick what I'm doing. I've got a little piece of sandpaper, just rolled up like a tiny little firecracker would be, and it's just big enough, well, at least it was until I started fiddling with it. It's just big enough to fit inside the cylinder chambers, and they go in, and you just spin it around a couple times. We're just deburring right now. We don't want to take a whole hell of a lot off because we don't want it to be a gaping hole. Just like so. You can wrap the sandpaper around a toothpick or get some epoxy and make your own. And this is off of the 1000 grit. And all we do is deburr the heck out of it. So let's go ahead and put this thing back together and see how the key works now. And on the key, let me get some focus going here. Is it gonna focus? Manual it is. So this is what I ended up with the key, and it works pretty well. I'm hoping that by cleaning up the chambers and loosening things up, I don't get as much locking up on the pins. But we will give it a whirl here. The heights are all pretty good. The key's pretty good. And I just used some sandpaper on the key just to kind of touch it up a little bit. Moment of truth. Still catching on that last pin a little bit. So I'm going to have to do a little more sanding on the key, but we're close. It goes in really smooth. And it kind of comes out if you catch it in the right mood, but I don't know how that's going to behave with spring tension on top of it. It might actually be a little better because the spring tension tends to keep these things from bobbling around as much. But we're at the point now where I can actually do a core test and make sure that we can put it together. And that will pretty much complete the lock at that point. So let's get our core out. We're going to put it in like this. I don't want anything to fall into any kind of drill protection or anything funky, so let's just go ahead and assemble. Put the check pin in. And I'm going to come up right alongside the existing pins. Now before I turn it and lock it in place, I just want to give it a test and see how easily I can bugger it up, maybe. There we go. Alright. So, moment of truth, let's lock it up. It locks. The key comes out. The key goes in. Technical difficulties. That's in there. But it doesn't want to turn. Now let's check that pin 9. Because I've never tried doing this before. And I want to see whether or not that pin has anything to do with this not working. Because it was always dicey using the tip of a key. Just because it looks right outside the core doesn't mean it's going to be right inside the core. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the key does work, it's just needs some refinement. So let's figure out where it's binding, what the problem is, and take care of it. I'll be right back. Alright folks, did a little bit of sanding. Got it so it works. You kind of have to pull down on the key a little bit, a touch. I wish I had a code cutter, really did. But that's alright, because you know, like I said, I'm not very good at hand filing keys. It does come in and out, though. I did a little bit more sanding, a little bit more shaping. You just got to jiggle it a little bit. It's not, you know, it's not perfect. But it's done. And once I get a code cutting machine, this is going to be a lot easier because you know, you can make much more precise stuff when you can actually cut it. So let's put the rest of it back together, and we'll make sure that the lock works, and then we'll cut again, and we'll come back for the final stage of this operation. Now, I've already got quite a bit done on this thing. If you wanted to just stop right now, you're already way ahead of what the minimum requirements are for a challenge lock. So we're going to throw this in. Oop, don't do like I just did. That's what happens. You know, it's midnight, I'm tired, not paying attention. Probably shouldn't be trying to make a challenge lock, especially with my only core. Well, my only core of this type. Forgot to put the stupid actuator bar back in. And there we go. Let's throw it in our lock. See, I sanded down the bottom here because it bugged me that this wasn't, you know, this didn't feel right here. It was kind of above by a slight, so this was almost recessed and it just didn't feel right. So I sanded it. And I sanded the sides too because I had a bunch of marks and everything else, and I wanted a nice fresh surface to be able to put the right stuff on it. Where the heck's my screwdriver? There it is. Alright. Moment of truth, folks. And it works. You just have to pull down on the key. Cool. I'm happy with it. Not bad for first attempt at it. So let's get to stamping. I'm going to grab the stuff that I need to do that. We're going to stamp my Reddit name in here, and we're going to give the lock a name and give it a number for identification. But otherwise, this is my first challenge lock, and it is now complete. Alright folks, this is going to be the last segment. The lock is fully assembled. The key, it works. It works pretty good. It doesn't turn right away. You have to pull down away from the pins, and it turns fine. And the reason why is because I missed my depth. Pin 4, I believe it is, I cut slightly too deep. And again, like I said, there's no way to put metal back on it, but it happened while it was sanding. Apparently, I was caught up on some kind of burr when I was testing it, and it tested fine, but then once I sanded it and got all the burrs off the edges, the pin was able to go just deep enough to create a problem. But again, if you just pull down and turn, it works just fine. So now all we have left to do is put this thing up in our pan of ice and go ahead and put the maker's marks on the side. However, I will caution you, pan of ice, if I can offer one bit of constructive criticism on this unit, your threading is slightly higher than the 2 bars. So if I were to just put this lock in here, rest it on the bars, clamp it up tight, and start whacking it with the letters, I'm going to end up with 3 little lines on this side, and that was one of the things I had to sand off from the first time. I don't know if you remember, I kind of pointed out that I had some old maker's marks on here because I had different plans for this lock. You can kind of still see one of them right here a little bit in the glare, maybe. I don't know if we'll catch that. We're not even in perfect focus here. Let me try and get the focus a little better. There. Yeah, so I ended up sanding it off, and I smoothed out a lot of the edges. These locks have really sharp edges and kind of makes them uncomfortable to hold. I wanted to round the edges for those pickers that like to hold the lock in their hands to pick, and just make it, a little more comfortable for them, a little smoother. Um, but yeah, creature comforts. There's nothing wrong with that. So what I'm going to do is, in order to get around that, you know, all you got to do is just, you know, pan of ice, please. Either make the post slightly larger, make the screws slightly smaller, or offset them somehow, you know, even just slightly, so that the threads do not sit above the level of the bars. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this old index card. This is actually back from a long time ago. I've had these forever and I've never used them for anything, so let's make a little paper wedge. Now, the width of the lock here is about as big as you want to make it, because all we're going to do is just make a strip to go over the top of this, and hopefully save ourselves some hassle. So we're just going to fold it over and over, about yay big, and just over and over and over and over. And we're going to make it nice and thick. Like so. And we're just going to take it and we're going to set it across the top before we put our vise in. Now, on this side is where I'm going to put my Reddit username. So let's start with that. And then once I got it all marked up, I will come back. I'm going to do 1 or 2 marks on this, and then I'll show the finished product at the very end. So I lied. This isn't going to be the very last one, because I don't want. I'm sure you don't want to sit here for 10 minutes while I do all the punches. But so Reddit username /u/JamiesLocks. Same as my YouTube channel. And we're just going to take our little hammer. I got my little baby hammer from Harbor Freight. And we're going to start. Now, I know that this is probably going to be hard to see, but I don't have a layout that will fit this, so I'm just going to try and wing it. And it's just kind of the way these things are. They're cheap Harbor Freight, you know, what do you expect? So I'm going to hold it at about, you know, I know that vertically it's right here. I want it to be more like, well, like that on the surface. So we're just going to set it down right at the edge and turn it just, not quite a 45. And then we're just going to give it a little whack. Okay, so the vise needs to be locked down more. Test blow. Not too bad. And it needs to be straightened. I'm going to lock this thing down good. I'm going to pick the camera up a little bit because I'm kind of close to it right now and it's limiting my swing room. So let's go ahead and let's put the punch back on and let's get it right back in the same spot where we were at about the same angle. Now let's give it a good whack. There's our first slash. Now that wasn't very long, and that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set it again, and I'm going to punch it again. And keep doing it until you get the depth and length that you want. And just make sure that you just stay on the mark you were on. That'll work. Now let's get the U, which is right here. And we're going to make sure that one stays nice and square. And we're going to make sure it's facing the right direction. nestle it right in there. Make sure it's lined up about right. Again, it's not going to be an exact science, and just make sure it doesn't wander on you like that one just did for me. Get it lined up. It's crooked. That's okay. I'm not going to fret over it or anything. I'm just going to... Hey, nice deep one there. Lock is moving on me. Let's get it recentered. Oh, and let's check the other side. We've been banging on it. Good. The paper's doing its job. Whoop. Alright, I'm going to come back when the whole thing is stamped up, and we'll finish off the video. Alright folks, it's done. And I did have a bit of a mishap, but you can see I got JamiesLocks on this side. Let's get this in focus. Yep. Yeah, I mishit on the eye on a second round. There. I mishit on the eye. And this is why I'm going to get one of those lineup blocks, or I'll make one in my wood shop. And then on this side, I forgot that little disc was there. So this one I'm calling Prototype, and I'm doing all like hacker leet speak crap. But Prototype 001. The lock still works. That didn't seem to affect anything. I don't even know what it covers. But the shackle still moves freely. So, there it is, folks. My first official challenge lock. All done, ready to go. This is going out to Reddit user Nemo Griff. He's volunteered to be my guinea pig. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a little bit long. I hope you found some information useful in terms of just, direction to head in. Just kind of be creative, Take it where you want to go. With adding this stuff to it, let's see, 12 pins, counter milled, threaded, and stamped. 15 modifications. The key itself doesn't count. But it does work. So, I'm not going to complain. Just gotta put it all the way in, pull it down, and turn. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. I'm not doing any more videos this weekend. Unless I get something really cool to show you. So, enjoy yourselves. Thanks.